Hello. Greetings from Carson Goring from Mickey and from me. Mickey's very affectionate this afternoon. Well, I have been receiving an awful lot of questions and an awful lot of comments relating to Harry's arrival, the ramifications of what's going on in the family, or to what extent certain of the reports are accurate as to some of the things Prince Philip said. So if I may, I will plunge right in, okay? With the very first question. It relates to Harry's arrival. And in fact, there's so many of them that, if I may, I'll just encapsulate, because otherwise I'm going to be repeating myself. Yes, Harry arrived. I was all in favor of Harry's arrival. I was also definitely not in favor of Meghan's arrival, as I articulated only too clearly on various programs in this country and in Australia and South Africa, etc., etc. And I am delighted to see that Meghan actually was wise enough to understand that it would have been a bridge too far for her to come over, especially considering the complete disrespect that she showed for Prince Philip, and in fact the burden of pain that she ensured that his final days would possess. Now, I will quote from somebody called Spanky, which I hope is just a nickname and not an implication, who says, Meghan Markle, quote unquote, did not receive medical clearance from her physician to travel to the funeral. What odd phraseology to use. Couldn't agree more. Wouldn't a normal statement be more like, given the Duchess's stage of pregnancy, her physician determined that travel would involve too much risk, end of quotes, or something about being pregnant. The phrase did not receive clearance can also mean, quote unquote, did not ask the doctor for clearance, end of quotes, and therefore didn't receive clearance. A physician could not release a statement or imply a statement about pregnancy if she's not pregnant. At least it would be against medical ethics and rules. The phrase Meghan did not receive clearance does not implicate any of her doctors. Each one can say honestly that she and he was not consulted. Well, that's actually a very prescient observation to make, if I may put it like that. I mean, yet again, here we have the whole issue of a mystery where there should be no mystery whatsoever. And it is so tedious that anybody can create not only such mysteries, but such havoc. But it does ensure that she stays in the conversation. Well, pregnant or not pregnant, bump or no bump, and I'm not implying either way about anything, especially for legal reasons. But it just goes to show the mischief Meghan creates. But for whatever reason and whatever the fig leaf, I am delighted that she actually has not shown up. And I know so is everybody else. And by everybody else, I mean the royal family. My information is that they were dreading having her flouncing her way in, creating havoc, making it all about herself. At least this way they and Harry get a clear run, which is all to the good. The next issue that has arisen with very many people is Harry and Meghan's tributes. Well, of course, Harry has arrived here, and Harry has actually given a really rather nice, cheeky chappy tribute to his grandfather, who also had a cheeky chappy side to his character. Well, actually, he didn't really. He wasn't a cheeky chappy. He was a wisecracker, which is a completely different thing. He was very witty, very entertaining, loved to keep conversation bubbling along. You never really knew what next he was going to come out with, as Harry has rightly said. And he had the gift of the unexpected comment, the unexpected turn of phrase. And Harry has given a very nice tribute to his grandfather, which goes some way towards mitigating the onerousness of the other tribute, which I will now get to. Rose Thorne says, I hope that's a nom de plume. Otherwise, it's going to be a lifetime of comments from people. It has been pointed out that Nutmeg and Harriet gave more of a heartfelt statement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, someone whom they had never met, than they did for Prince Philip. How disgusting they truly are. Now, since there are many, many comments along this line, I think I will read out another one, which is from Angela Drummond. Meghan Markle tribute to Supreme Court judge she didn't know personally, stating she had conviction, courage, and brilliance. Tribute to family member Prince Philip, an ugly brown background, and the word service. It showed how petty the two of them really are. Well, I would actually say that it certainly shows how petty she is, and it certainly shows how under her thumb he is, if indeed he even knew that it was going out, because my understanding is that she just does things and he's constantly playing catch up. And there was even some evidence of that in the Oprah interview, which we might get to a little bit later, because I've heard some very interesting reports about the fallout between them from the Oprah interview. Mrs. M says, on RTL, Harry and Meghan thanked Prince Philip for his service as if he were their employee. How disrespectful. This is one amongst many, and another one is from Gibbers King. I too found this statement off-putting, cold, unconnected, as you said, as though an employee, not a royal prince, consort to Her Majesty the Queen, husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, Britisher of the first class in duty and loyalty, who had died. Yes, well, I think there is a common thread that has emerged, that yet again Meghan is tone deaf. Yet again Meghan comes out with a comment that is inappropriate, and also, of course, she's scoring points, you see, because the palace said that they couldn't fulfill their royal duties as they weren't doing a life of service. At every opportunity, she pokes in the word service, needling. But anyway. The fact is, Harry's grandfather loved him and he loved his grandfather. And his grandfather understood how very troubled he is, which we will come to in a little while. But that doesn't mean he didn't love him, even though it does mean he was mightily fed up with him by the end of it all. You see, the family in a situation like this, and I know it from personal experience very sadly, is going to be mixed. The attitudes are going to be contradictory. They're going to be torn in two directions. You know, Harry, to an extent, has betrayed them pretty badly. He and his wife have created absolute havoc internationally and made the last weeks of Prince Philip's life very much more disturbed than it would have been had they not done what they did. And make no mistake about it, they knew he was going to be dying soon. They may not have known he was going to be dying at 1 minute to such and such an hour on such and such a day, but they knew he was dying. I knew he was dying. Everybody who has anything to do with the royal family knew he was dying. They knew he was dying, so their conduct really is pretty unforgivable. However, this, with Meghan not here, could be an opportunity for mending fences. My own experience of situations like this is that even when you mend the fence, it's artificial. It doesn't have the strength that it did. At the first sign of some pressure on the fence, you realize the original split was there and it has weakened the fence. But what do you do in a situation like that? If you have a loved one who is troubled and who is trouble, you have a choice. You either cut them out of your life altogether, or you bump along as best you can. My understanding is that nobody in the family actually has a script that they're going to be adhering to where Harry's concerned. They all have their personal feelings. They all know what he's done. A view, incidentally, that is shared by tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people all over the world, certainly in their tens of thousands who've been in touch with me. But what do? You know, I mean, it's possible that things will be a little bit better during the time that Harry's here for his grandfather's funeral, and that they will be able to address some of the issues. But even if they get through to Harry, once he goes back to Montecito and he is back under Meghan's spell, it's going to be as if it had never happened. It's like an alcoholic drinking or a drug addict taking a drug. You're clean, you're rational. You indulge, you're irrational. There are no halfway houses in a situation like this. You know, Giles Brandreth, who is somebody I know somewhat and like very much and respect, and who has had a long-standing friendship with Prince Philip, made the point a day or two ago that Prince Philip said to him that what Harry and Meghan had done with Oprah was madness. Well, I don't know if some of you will cast your mind back to things I have been saying recently, because the word madness has been used quite a lot. And not as a figure of speech, but as a reality that just happens to coincide with a figure of speech. Now, Prince Philip had experience of madness. His mother went insane and was institutionalized in the early 30s. He knows what true madness is all about. It ruined the early part of his life, and it's ruined the end of his life. But he loved his mother. People also condemned his father and said that Prince Andrew was a rake and a ne'er-do-well. Prince Philip never, ever once had anything negative to say about his father. Never. He wouldn't allow people to be negative about him, and he never was. He always spoke of him with respect, because Prince Philip understood something that onlookers would not have understood, which is how very difficult it is to live with a woman when she's off her trolley. It's not easy coping with mad people. I can tell you, I've coped with more than one. My mother was one. My ex-husband was another. I mean, he was nuttier than a fruit cake. So, the point is, Harry really needs help, and Meghan needs help. Meghan, even though some of her conduct might strike you as being atrocious, if you look at it from a medical point of view, she is deluded. She is delusional. She's not connected to reality in a healthy and positive way. That is one of the definitions of being mad, of being insane, of being crazy. You know, the fact that she can string words together and concoct what people call word salad doesn't mean that she's sane. And she really displays many signs of insanity. I think we need to get this on board to actually understand the dilemma the family is in and how they are having to deal with it and how it colors their attitudes and what they will be doing. You know, Prince Philip was a tough old boot, and he used to say that one of the greatest influences in his life was his grandmother, Princess Victoria of Hesse and the Rhine. Princess Victoria, who became Princess Louis of Battenberg, then the Marchioness of Milford Haven, then the Dowager Lady Milford Haven. She was an extremely intelligent woman, and she also was very matter-of-fact and down-to-earth. And Prince Philip gave her an awful lot of credit for shaping him, his way of thinking, his way of handling situations, his way of dealing with life. She was one of the major influences of his life. And this is, of course, something that the average person would have no concept of. But if you want to entertain yourself, Google the Dowager Marchioness of Milford Haven and see what comes up. I've never Googled her, but I would hope that there would be something of interest there. To the best of my knowledge, there's not really been a proper biography written of her, not that I'm aware of anyway. I now come to another point that several people have made, which sadly is a true point. And what I find interesting is how very involved the public have been in this matter and how they are clearly thinking with their head and feeling with their heart. Madeline Levy says, "So sad. It was just announced Prince Philip has passed away. It's such a great pity. The interview had to happen exactly when he was so sick. It's well known that stress can kill people just like any other illness. They really could have waited until he was recovered before releasing that bombshell into their midst." Then Marlene Ravon says, "Prince Philip has just died. I suspect all the stress caused by Dumb and Dumber has no doubt helped him on his way." Well, I think you're both right. My information is that he was extremely distressed by what was going on. They tried to keep some of it away from him, the most appalling parts of it, but he was very upset nevertheless. And yes, the stress did not help. It was obvious that Prince Philip was going to die sooner rather than later. Everybody was, except possibly him, was hoping that he would make it till his 100th birthday. Harry, Meghan, and the Oprah interview did not help. Yes, it might well have hastened his death, and actually most likely did. But my understanding is that the Oprah interview has also caused problems between Meghan and Harry. And I believe what I have been told, because just the way the interview went, they were not on the same page about certain things. And for instance, the matter of the family member who was alluding, according to Harry, or according to Meghan actually, to the color of the baby's skin when she was pregnant with Archie. And according to Harry, there was a conversation that had taken place before he married Meghan. So they weren't on the same page at all with that. And my understanding is that Harry was actually completely shocked when he discovered in the interview that Meghan had gilded lilies in a way that he had not expected that they would be gilded, and that has caused problems between them. Well, that's to the good. Now, I'm not hoping that Meghan and Harry or any other couple should break up. But I am hoping that a couple that is so obviously out of touch with reality will find it within their power to seek treatment so that they will connect with reality. Because one lesson of Prince Philip's life, which Harry will know only too well, is that his grandfather was the outstanding success that he was because he was always realistic. He always dealt with the realities of what was happening. He didn't deal with fantasy. He did not disconnect from reality. Harry and Meghan are disconnected from reality. And I would hope that on this visit, there will be enough progress made that obviously he's going to go back to California. And obviously he's going to await the birth of his daughter. But I would hope that the scales are beginning to fall off his eyes. And he is beginning to see the woman that he married for what she is and not what she has portrayed herself to him to be and what he would like to believe she is. You know, she has gilded the lily, to return to that metaphor, in many ways. They are going to, well, if he's going to have any sort of a life, he's going to have to touch terra firma at some point. I personally don't know that she is capable of touching terra firma. I think she is what you would call a true phony. I don't think that she actually can distinguish desire from reality. I don't think she can distinguish fact from fiction. I think if she could, she wouldn't have made some of the fundamental errors she has made. He needs to save himself, but I think it's going to be a very long and a very hard road. But I know that his family, they are all hoping, possibly against hope, but they are hoping that at some point he will begin to see things for what they are and to do something about it so that they do not continue down this destructive path that they have taken. Prince Philip did say, and the reason why I was able to allude to certain things was that I was also privy to some of the things Prince Philip had been saying. He said that he did not think any good would come of that interview and that they would live to regret it. I'm not sure that she will live to regret it. I'm not sure she's capable of learning such penetrating lessons. He's more in touch with reality than she is, oddly enough. And I think he will live to regret it. Whether he stays with her or not. Because evidently it was such a shock to him to discover that she had made certain assertions that he had no idea she was going to make. Well, of course, he's going to support his wife as long as he wants to stay with her. And, you know, she has completely limeranced him. And it's going to take a while for him to be weaned off that drug if he can ever manage it. It's not going to be an overnight thing. Mickey's just snoring. It's not going to be an overnight thing. But hopefully this is the beginning. To continue the theme of how sympathetic members of the public are with the royal family situation vis-a-vis Harry and Meghan, I will read a comment from Lizelle Bernal. I can't imagine my grandpa dying in a hospital and I letting my partner trash my family in a public pay tale on television. Shame on them. How he can go back to Prince Philip's funeral knowing he hurt him, a whole country, his grandparents, his dad, brother, and nephews, and woman who was once like a sister, which obviously is Catherine Cambridge. He is a total disgrace and a world embarrassment. Yes, well, I am afraid, my dear, your sentiments are shared by many people. Your sentiments, I understand, are to an extent shared by his family as well. But because they love him and they understand that he is in the grips of a form of madness and that it has completely taken over his personality and it has eroded all sense of judgment that he had, they are more stoical and tolerant than you and possibly I would be. Then Maria Lane says, when Prince Philip heard that his gift of his own personally precious hunting guns had been sold by Has, that must have wounded him. When I received a valuable heirloom from an aged relative, I was begged not to sell it while she was alive. It meant so much to her. Well, again, we come down to the matter of judgment and proportionality and rationality. And somebody who is as completely under the spell of another person as Harry has been under Meghan's spell, and who is so desperate to please Meghan, to the extent that he has jettisoned his friends, his family, his country, his military standing, his way of life, his old belief system. All his loved ones. Is it any surprise that Meghan, who is evidently on the most massive power trip and loves nothing better, as her personality type always loves nothing better than dominating, controlling, and having everybody licking the soles of their feet? Is it any surprise that she would have set up the situation for him to behave like that? It's not a surprise to me. And I will say, his grandfather was very wise. I mean, Prince Philip had done over a period of decades a lot of studying about psychology. He was on a quest for the true meaning of life and what you need to do to give your life meaning. Yes, that's the sort of thing that would make anybody sad. But it's also the sort of thing that a man of Philip's stature would have understood. He'd have understood why. He wouldn't have agreed with it. He wouldn't have liked it. He wouldn't have been happy to have to accept it. But he would have accepted it and moved on from it without bitterness. He was not a bitter man. He always tried to understand lessons he had learnt in boyhood when his mother went mad and his father broke up the family and went to live in the south of France. He had to make sense of it. That meant he couldn't throw stones. He had to understand what had happened and why it had happened. And you know, when terrible things happen to you in life, and I'm now speaking from personal experience, because one of the most terrible things that could have happened to any human being happened to me when I was growing up. And it was handled in the most appalling manner. And there are no two ways about it. But you have to understand in a situation like this why it happened, why each person did what they did. How did this terrible thing come to pass in a world where everybody's supposed to be nice and kind and loving and everybody's supposed to love you, and they behave in ways that are deeply regrettable, let's put it that way. Throwing stones isn't going to help. Genuine understanding is the only thing that helps. And I am absolutely sure, without ever having discussed it with Prince Philip, that he would have understood that Harry was surrendering something he loved from somebody he loved to prove to somebody who was controlling him and testing him in a destructive manner. But that Harry was doing what he did, trying to prove his love for this woman. I mean, it's very simple to figure out. And I have no doubt that Prince Philip figured it out and didn't hold it against Harry. But I'm pretty also damn sure that there's no way he'd have been giving him anything else of any consequence. That I'm sure of as well, because Prince Philip wasn't a fool. And I would like to end with a comment from a Jamaican lady called Elaine Garrigue. Lady C, I am a black Jamaican and I love listening to you. Thank you very much. The world needs to know what Meghan is. She did not fool me from day one. My dear, you're better than me. She fooled me from day one. She fooled me for the first several months. You are much better than I am, and I'm glad to hear she didn't fool you. Or as they used to say in Jamaica, she didn't lamps you. Depending on your age, you know what that means. It's an old Jamaican expression. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed this. If you have, please like, subscribe, share, press the notification bell, and keep the questions coming in the comments section. Thank you so much. God bless. Bye.